Welcome to the Eric Brady podcast, Series 1, Adolf Hitler, His Bombers and Me. Episode 28, Living with the Injuries. Eric, how prepared were they at school when you returned with the injuries from the bombing?
I was given the choice of, quotes, normal school or, quotes, a handicapped school. Now, in a way, perhaps oddly, I didn't regard myself as handicapped, even though I'd got this injured arm and ankle, because in my view, you could only really classify yourself as handicapped if you were in a wheelchair. I no longer had to be in a wheelchair, and therefore, in my reckoning, I was not handicapped, and therefore I could go to a normal school, which is what I did.
Although there they didn't have the same rules about a fair fight. What were those?
When I was in hospital, if there was any dispute between us kids that went rather bad-tempered, inevitably being boys, we would have a fight. But the lad who was really the boss of the ward said that we had got to have a fair fight so that we should each adopt the handicap of the other. I only remember one incident where a lad had a caliper across half his body, so one of his legs was rigid in the caliper, and so when he and I had a fight, I had to kneel on the bed with him with one leg over the side, as he did, and he could only use one fist against me, as I could only use one fist against him. And so we had a scrap and sorted out whatever the problem had been, and we were good friends again afterwards. At the new school I went to, a teacher there, the French teacher, was noticed that I'd got my arm permanently in a sling, and he wanted to know what the trouble was. So I told him, and he said that was my arm in that sling permanently? And I said, well, yes, that's what the doctor says. He said, all the time? I said, well, yes. And he said, well, this is terrible. I was in India before the war, and there'd be parents there who would strap up a child's arm when he was very small so that he would grow up with that arm fixed in that position so that he would be able to, in later years, earn a living as a beggar. And he didn't want that to happen to me, so I ought to not keep my arm in a sling all the time. And he would go on and on about this, wondering whether I would be a beggar when I grew up, or if I could think of some form of job I could do that he couldn't imagine anything I could do with my arm like this. Neither of us thought about me being a teacher, but there we were. And he would go on about this, and the class didn't mind at all, and nor did I particularly, because while he was going on about that, he wasn't pestering us to learn French. A while later, because I kept on falling over, my mother took me to the doctor and asked if something could be done about my disabled ankle. And I was told that I would have to wear a caliper that they designed. That was a metal support that went round my leg just below the knee with a strap, and also my shoe had to be adapted to pull the bottom of that metal piece, the metal support, closer to my ankle. Fortunately, at that time, we would be sitting in the classroom and the teacher would come to us. So when the French teacher came and I started wearing this caliper, I was already sitting down, so he never saw it, but I wondered what he'd make of that. When I came home from hospital, I was still having a great deal of pain in my left hand. And my mother told me that what was happening was that the nerves were dying from the brachial plexus injury, and that when they actually did die, I would have no more pain. The painkillers at that time were certainly not as effective as they are now. And one day, my mother saw what strain I was under, because I'd had one of the bouts that had gone on for 3 days and 3 nights, and the painkillers that I'd had, which really were just aspirin, just weren't touching that. After dinner, I went out into the kitchen, and for some reason my mother followed me, and it just in time grabbed the carving knife away from me, because I was getting the pain particularly at my left index finger, just below the knuckle to the next joint, and I was going to cut my finger off, because I thought any pain from the cut finger, at least I wouldn't have that pain anymore. So my mother decided that my method of treatment was rather drastic, and so took me to the family doctor and asked was there anything else they could do. So all that they could do at the time was to make a plaster of Paris cast my left forearm, which would immobilize when strapped into the palm of my hand, and so immobilizing the wrist and fingers, they thought, so I'd get no more pain, because they thought the pain was because I was moving my fingers. But that was totally ineffective. But over the years, the pain has got a lot less, so the modern painkillers can pretty much deal with it. One of the consequences of my injuries was the effect of the blow on the head, which at first my father had been warned could actually have been so severe as to be actual brain damaged. Though, as far as I'm aware, there was not any actual brain damage beyond that of concussion, severe concussion anyway. I did have severe problems of memory loss, short-term memory loss particularly. And my father devised what he considered a treatment for me. And that was to tell me to do something one night, and then ask me the next night or 2 nights later whether I had done it. It was something in the garden, usually, like weeding the cabbages or whatever. With my short-term memory loss, I would frequently forget. He would say, well, have you done whatever it was? No, I haven't, I forgot. But then one day, I did remember he told me to weed the cabbages. I actually did it. And then when he asked me 2 nights later, I said, yes, shouting. He said, well, there's no need to deafen me. And I wish I could say from that point of time my memory was scintillating, but it never was.
To buy your copy of Adolf Hitler, His Bombers and Me to read alongside the series, go to ericbradybooks.co.uk. The Eric Brady podcast can be found on YouTube, podcast services, and at ericbrady.blogspot.com.